Shalom, welcome to the Jewish Task Force, J.T.F. I'm Chaim ben Pesach, and we have another program with the great David ben Moshe. On this program, you're going to hear about the Treasury Department and the State Department in the closing days of the Biden-Harris administration trying to go after the Hilltop Youth, and how we in J.T.F. now have to change how we're going to be funding things in Israel until this policy is reversed. We're going to explain it to you because you know that we're super careful on this program, even though we've followed every single rule and every single law meticulously. We've gone overboard to follow every rule and every law. But because of their sanctions, this crazy new sanction that they've put as of October 1st, 2024, we have to change our focus, and we have to change our focus temporarily until this is reversed. We'll explain to you everything that's going on. Wait till you hear this. But before we get to this program is dedicated to a refuah shlema, complete recovery, for Sharon Mitman, Shlomo ben Sarah, Dorit bat Sarah, Ruven ben Shoshana, and Ruth bat Sarah. And to Ilui Neshamot, elevating of the souls, for Malka bat Meir, Allegra bat Shlomo, Daniel Nankin, Victor Chazdai, Pesach Zeb ben Dov, Lunita Adler, Shifra Hoffman, Ruven Hoffman, Barry Hoffman, Harab Mir Kahana, Rab Binyamin Kahana, Tzipora Fegi bat Liba, Yosef ben Meir, Robert Mittman, Dennis Shore, Helen Friedman, Charles Zolat, and Yair Levine. Now, you know that sanctions were being placed by the United States under the evil anti-Semitic Biden-Harris administration against Jewish heroes in Judea and Samaria. They were being sanctioned, even though they did nothing. They did nothing wrong. They were put on the same sanctions list that Muslim terrorist mass murderers are put on, with Hamas and Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad and Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. They were put on the same list as all of these mass murdering, vile, vicious, lunatic organizations. These were just ordinary Israeli Jews who have a farm in Judea and Samaria, or who are settling in Judea and Samaria, never did anything violating any law, nothing. Now, there are cases where the Arabs just literally make up stories against Jews. And that's why even the left-wing Israeli police and the left-wing Israeli courts haven't done anything. Believe me, if there was any validity to any of the accusations, the left-wing media and the left-wing Israeli courts and the left-wing police in Israel would arrest them immediately and make a big deal about it. Believe me, in 2 seconds they would do that. But there is no validity. These people have done nothing. Absolutely nothing. In fact, they're the victims of Arab terrorism. What happens is the Arab terrorists attack, and then they blame their victims. That's what happens.
And the thing is, the world listens to the Arabs. When the Arabs scream, the world listens.
Well, in the last presidential election, at least the American people, at least that part of the world, didn't listen. The majority of the American people, we're going to discuss that, voted for Donald Trump. And we're going to discuss that. Because the people he's appointing don't agree with the sanctions. But anyway, so they're not winning over the majority of the American people. That the last election proved. At least that's true in the United States. Now, the bottom line is that they were putting these people on sanctions lists, and J.T.F. did not give any money to anyone on the sanctions list. Of course not. Not because we agree with the sanction. We don't agree with the sanctions. The sanctions are anti-Semitic, they're evil, and they're undemocratic, anti-Semitic, un-American, evil, and they're intended to support Islamic terrorists in Judea and Samaria. That's what the sanctions are there for. But if anybody was on the sanctions list, we had no choice. We have to abide by the law. We have to obey the law. And we as bad as it is and as terrible as it is, we didn't give any money to anyone on the sanctions list. But now, as of October 1st, 2024, not only did they put individual Jews who never did anything wrong and who are actually Jewish heroes on the sanctions list, not only did they put these individual Jews on this sanctions list, on October 1st, 2024, they announced a new sanction against Hilltop Youth. All Hilltop Youth now are on, they say now are sanctioned. New sanction against Hilltop Youth. First of all, there is no organization called Hilltop Youth. How do you put Hilltop Youth on the sanctions list? They don't have an organization with chapters. There's a name that has been given, a loosely defined term that has been given called Hilltop Youth. But they don't have an organization with chapters and members. There is nothing. How do you put them on the sanctions list? But it just says Hilltop Youth. As of October 1st, 2024, the Biden-Harris administration put them on the sanctions list. Hilltop Youth. And by the way, Hilltop Youth, according to most Israelis, they consider all young Jews in Judea and Samaria to be Hilltop Youth. You know how many people we're talking about here? We're talking about hundreds of thousands of young Jews. Because there are 520,000 Jews in Judea and Samaria, and most of them are young because they have a lot of children. Most of them are young. So you're talking about hundreds of thousands of young Jews now that most Israelis and the Israeli media define as Hilltop Youth. So hundreds of thousands of Jews are now on the sanctions list? You're not allowed to help hundreds of thousands of Jews? I mean, you can't get more anti-Semitic, more vicious than this. It's just unbelievable. And the Secretary of State who pushed the policy is Antony Blinken, a self-hating Jew. And the Secretary of the Treasury who pushes the policy is Janet Yellen, a self-hating Jew. And the Vice President who was running for president, Kamala Harris, her husband is Doug Hemhoff, a self-hating Jew. And the people who are against this are the Republicans who are Gentiles, who are not Jewish. They condemned the sanctions. We're going to talk about that. They condemned it. So hopefully Trump is going to reverse all of this and cancel all of this when he takes office. We certainly hope so. But to put the whole Hilltop Youth on the sanctions list, now, first of all, before October 1st, this started on, they did this on October 1st, 2024. Anything J.T.F. gave before October 1st, 2024, it's not relevant to this because they weren't on any sanctions list before October 1st. But since October 1st, 2024, now they're on a sanctions list. So to be super careful, even though there is no way that anything we're giving in any way violates any law, and this is so vague and ridiculous, it's completely illegal and unconstitutional. But despite that, we're going to be, because we are so careful and so cautious, we have to change now who we're going to be giving money to temporarily until Trump hopefully cancels all of this. When Trump and his appointees, by the way, have publicly condemned the sanctions. We're going to explain that to you in a moment. But hopefully when they cancel it, then we'll go back to supporting the Jewish heroes in Judea and Samaria, the Jewish pioneering heroes. But until then, our money and fundraising, we're going to continue fundraising and continue, but the fundraising and what we do temporarily because of this, because we're super, super cautious, way overboard cautious. Because of that, we're going to temporarily use our funding just to spread our message. That's what it's going to be used for now. Temporarily, until this issue is finally resolved. But again, you can't say Hilltop Youth are on the sanctions list. You can't give money to Hilltop Youth. Who are Hilltop? Do you know that according to the Israeli public and the Israeli media, there are Israeli cabinet ministers who are frequently called Hilltop Youth. The media refers to Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich and other members of the Israeli cabinet, ministers in the Israeli cabinet, are called hilltop youth. And by the way, there are left-wing self-hating Jews that say that they should be put on the sanctions list too, and they're Israeli cabinet, elected Israeli cabinet members, part of the Israeli government. They want to put them all on the sanctions list. I mean, this is beyond absurd. Beyond absurd.
It's easy to put someone on a sanctions list if you're not living there. It's the Israelis who have to go through daily rockets. How many Israelis lost their homes in the north? And if you don't live there, you can't understand what it's like to be rocketed every single day. Sometimes a few rockets, sometimes many rockets. The Iron Dome can't stop them all. Some will always get through, and just hopefully they miss. But that's what life is like. Israel is in a very tough neighborhood. And if you don't live there, you can't understand what it's like.
It's much worse than that. The Arab Muslim Nazis want to exterminate the entire Jewish people. That's what this is about. This is like during the Holocaust, putting the 6 million Jews that were being murdered by Hitler and the Nazis on a sanctions list. Instead of sanctioning Nazi Germany, this is like sanctioning the Jews who were being murdered in Auschwitz. That's what this is like morally. That's the moral equivalence here. Because the Israelis are being set up for a Holocaust here. And that is what has been going on for 150 years. The Arabs have been trying to perpetrate a Holocaust in the Middle East, modeled after what Hitler and the Nazis did in Europe. And so Jews who defend themselves or who survive are put on sanctions lists. I mean, this is unbelievable. And Hilltop Youth, by the way, again, this is just, there is no organization called Hilltop Youth with chapters and with members and with... Hilltop Youth is a concept, a loosely defined term that is used for Jewish youth in Judea and Samaria that can be used to define, and most Israelis do define it, as hundreds of thousands of Jewish youth. Hundreds of thousands of young Jews are on a sanctions list now. I mean, this is literally like the Nazi boycotts of Jewish stores that took place after Kristallnacht in Nazi Germany. This is the same exact mentality here against the Jewish people. And self-hating Jews are leading the campaign to do this. Now, the good news is that these things backfire. When they put those young Jews on the sanctions list, I'm not talking about the Hilltop Youth now, this is a new thing that they just did. But when they put individual Jews, names of individual Jews on sanctions list in Israel, on the sanctions list in Israel, it backfired. Israeli Jews, because Israeli Jews are not prohibited from giving to people who are sanctioned, only American citizens are not supposed to give to people on sanctions lists. And so Israeli Jews increased their giving to specifically to the people who are on the sanctions list and the communities that they came from. Their fundraising tripled and quadrupled as a result of this. It backfired terribly. The overwhelming majority of Israelis are against these sanctions. And this builds much more support for the Jewish heroes in Judea and Samaria. Much more support. It backfired spectacularly. Even left-wing opposition leaders in Israel condemned the sanctions. Completely backfired. So that's good news. Means it isn't working. It doesn't work. And it actually helps. It actually is a boomerang effect. It actually helps the heroic Jewish pioneers in Judea and Samaria, whom the scum of the Biden-Harris administration hate. And all the left-wing scum that hate these wonderful pioneering Jews. Didn't work. Backfires. It's backfired. It's backfired. We saw the same thing in the United States with Donald Trump. They didn't learn with doing this. It backfired on the sanctions. It backfired when they used the same tactics. They used the same tactics against Donald Trump. We saw with our own eyes. We were all witnesses to it. Donald Trump, after the 2022 midterm elections, was behind in the polls even for the Republican nomination for president. People didn't want him again. They said, he's in his late 70s. Republicans didn't want him. Polls showed that he was not even going to win the Republican nomination. He was behind in Iowa and New Hampshire, the first two contests. He wasn't even going to win the nomination. People forgot that. After 2020, he endorsed candidates in 2024 that lost. You remember that, David, right? That he endorsed candidates who lost. He picked candidates who lost. The Republicans were mad at Trump. He was going to lose. He wasn't going to win even the Republican nomination. Then they indicted him. Every time, and they indicted him in 4 different places. I mean, they went after him obsessively, fanatically. And the indictments were, of course, ridiculous. But they indicted him 4 different jurisdictions. They indicted him. Every time they indicted him, every time he had a court date or a court case, his poll numbers went up. In fact, when he was first indicted, he instantly became the front runner for the Republican presidential nomination after the first indictment. That made him the front runner for the nomination. It backfired tremendously. And they continued with this even after he won the Republican nomination. They continued pushing this, if you recall. And again, every time they did this, he went up in the polls. It helped him. It didn't hurt him. It helped him. And you saw all the left-wing commentators on MSNBC and CNN saying, what is this? Every time we do something, it helps him. How is this possible? They were so, and those horrible, evil women on The View, that program called The View, they were always complaining about it. Come on, America. Why are you doing this? That's terrible. Every time they did this to him, it backfired because the American people know when something unfair is taking place. They know when someone is misusing the criminal justice system or government for an evil political agenda. They even tried, there was nothing they weren't going to try to stop him. They even wanted to take him off the ballot and say that he's invalid. He can't run for president. He's not even allowed to run for president. Then they saw that really backfired. Then he was really going up in the polls. So they backed off. They said, oh no, because there they saw that would really backfire.
This isn't unique to Donald Trump. Do you remember when the Republicans impeached Bill Clinton? His poll numbers went up too, because the people don't want the government turning on each other. They want everything to be fair and square. And if someone wins election, they won the election. Just leave it alone till the next election. And there is a sense of fairness in America. I don't think it's as prevalent as it once was back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, but Americans have a sense of fair play.
Yeah, but that comparison, what a comparison. Bill Clinton was, the Republicans were justified in going after Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was evil and committed crimes and going at Bill Clinton deserved to go after Bill Clinton. He deserved it.
He may have deserved it, but you see what happens. His polls go up.
Yeah, but still, I wouldn't compare that to Trump, because Trump, this was a complete miscarriage of justice. With Bill Clinton, it wasn't a miscarriage of justice. With Bill Clinton, it was justified. By the way, they did not go after Bill Clinton the way they should have. He raped Juanita Broderick. He raped her. Why didn't they have a trial against him? He did things that were, and they had evidence, a lot of evidence. They had enough evidence to convict him on that rape charge, okay? Because she went to a doctor, she went to hospital, she had friends who testified that she spoke about. She had all the elements that you usually need in a rape case. They had that against him. They didn't touch him on that charge.
Because if you're a Democrat, you can get away with almost anything.
That's very true, and that's why I don't like that comparison, because you're right to make the point that sometimes going after people, if the public feels they're being victimized, that leader is, or public figure is being victimized, that will boomerang in his favor. Yes, and that did happen with Bill Clinton. You're right. His poll numbers did go up. But in the case of Donald Trump, the American people were right to be angry over what they were doing to Donald Trump. They were right in that case. Because they charged Donald Trump with things that nobody has ever been charged with. They twisted themselves into pretzels to say this federal misdemeanor and state misdemeanor law, and we're going to try to make it a felony because it's a misdemeanor in pursuit of a felony. Crazy things that you never did. Nobody ever had this done to them. No one ever. And so, it was, with Trump, it was a clear miscarriage of justice. And the American people, they just rebelled against it. They did not like it. They said, this does not look right. And they rebelled against it. And the more they went after Trump, the more his poll numbers went up. So this doesn't work, this tactic. Okay, this tactic doesn't work. But we, in J.T.F., we're super careful and to make sure that we abide, even when the laws are unjust. And this is very unjust. The sanctions, very unjust. But we're so careful that we're going to change temporarily. We're going to change what we're doing. By the way, if you want to criticize us and say, hey, you're being too careful, you're being too cautious here, you're wrong, you should stand up and continue to give to the Jews in Judea and Samaria, even before this is resolved. You could say that might be justified, and there may be people who would say that to us, but we're going to be 1,000% cautious and not do that for now. Okay? We will start giving again to the heroic Jews in Judea and Samaria if and when the sanctions are reversed, and we certainly hope and expect that Donald Trump will do that. And why do I hope and expect that Donald Trump will do that? Because Donald Trump has appointed, they're saying that he's going to appoint Senator Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. I don't know if he's going to do it. It hasn't been announced yet, but Marco Rubio issued, from the minute the first sanctions were issued as a senator, he wrote a letter to Anthony Blinken protesting and condemning the sanctions. He's against the sanctions, Marco Rubio. So if he becomes Secretary of State, it certainly doesn't look like we're going to have a government that's going to be pursuing sanctions. And it's not just Marco Rubio. Look at the other people Donald Trump has picked so far. Pete Hegseth, who was had a Fox News program. A good guy, Pete Hegseth. He was picked
isn't he a former Marine?
Yes. He served in the military very honorably and in battle. And now he's been made Secretary of Defense. And all the generals are saying, what? He's Secretary of Defense? Because Trump went over the general. Because these generals are all left-wing affirmative action appointees now. They're all garbage. So Trump went over that, did the right thing in this case. He did the right thing. He went over the heads of the establishment people. He didn't appoint people like Mattis. Remember in the last administration, he appointed that weird lunatic Mattis, who reminds me of Tampon Tim Walz. You remember? I don't know if you remember, but he pointed.
Sure, he wasn't he the top Marine?
I don't know what he was the top. He had a desk job somewhere. He became the general. These general. They don't go into battle. These guys. But anyway, this guy Pete Hegseth, he's one of the guys who actually went into battle. Who actually was a fighter, and is an American patriot and a strong defender of Israel. He's an evangelical Christian. He went to Israel and he went to meet the Jews in Judea and Samaria, the Jews that are under sanction now. Those are the type of Jews he met with. He met with them and praised them and condemned the Biden-Harris administration for what they were doing to the Jews in Judea and Samaria. He's Secretary of Defense. So that doesn't look very good for the people who want sanctions. It sounds like he's on Israel's side. And Mike Waltz. Mike Waltz is now National Security Advisor. Congressman Mike Waltz of Florida, another strong defender of Israel, another Christian, Bible-believing Christian, strong defender of Israel. He's National Security Advisor. Kristi Noem is going to be in charge of Homeland Security. She's the governor of South Dakota, who in all of her interviews on Israel kept saying the Jews are God's chosen people. That doesn't look good for the sanctions people. I don't think that looks very good for them. And the new ambassador to Israel from the United States, Mike Huckabee, the governor of Arkansas, was a former governor of Arkansas. His daughter now is the governor of Arkansas again. He's a good guy, and so is his daughter. He's the new ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. You think he's going to support the sanctions, Mike Huckabee? In his first interview, he said, there's no such thing as a Palestinian people. Israel should not surrender anything. The problem isn't that Israel is too big, too small, too big. The problem is Israel's too small, and Israel shouldn't surrender anything. And there's no such thing as Palestinians. And he said that he said that God gave all of Judea and Samaria belongs to the Jews and to Israel. God gave that land to the Jewish people. That's what he said. This is God gave that land to the Jewish people. This belongs to the Jews. And he mentioned in passing that he visits Israel from time to time. You know how many times he's visited Israel? 100 times he's visited Israel. Talk about frequent flyers. I mean, 100 times he visited Israel. I mean, in fact, when Trump appointed him, Trump said, no one loves the people of Israel more than Mike Huckabee, and the people of Israel love him. How true that is. You remember when he ran for president, we started Jews for Huckabee. I did videos trying to promote him. Unfortunately, he didn't win. I wish he had won. That piece of garbage, John McCain won. Unfortunately, that filthy piece of garbage, establishment pig, John, from your home state, your newly adopted home state. That animal won. But
yeah, they called him a maverick. He wasn't a maverick. He was a left-winger, except he had an R next to his name instead of a D, but the two are interchangeable.
Anyway, but Mike Huckabee, unfortunately, did not win. That was sad that he didn't win, because he should have won the Republican nomination to run against Barack Hussein Osama. But he's the new ambassador to Israel. So, in other words, all the people that have been appointed so far are all people that are against the sanctions. In other words, these people at the sanction, they're supporting something that those who speak for the majority of the American people have opposed and condemned. The voters have spoken. Okay, the voters have picked these people. They picked Trump, and the people he's picking. That's who the majority of the American people wanted. That's who they voted for. And you know, the malicious Bolsheviks now, who are trying, you know, their last minute attempt, their last gasp attempt to undermine Israel and undermine the good Jews. But you know, it didn't work before. It's not going to work now. These heroic Jews are going to continue their campaign to save Israel. And now, I have to say that, by the way, when J.T.F. did give to the Jews in Judea and Samaria, and again, this was before the October 1st, 2024 sanctions, okay, before this crazy hilltop youth are sanctioned. Who are the hilltop? What does that mean? But anyway, that was before October 1st, 2024. All of our money went to education and to assist poor Jews with their basic needs and educational needs. I mean, all of this. J.T.F. always complied with the law and complied with the rules. Always. And we go overboard to do so. And yet, despite that, you know, you have this situation where they look for reasons to harass and bother people who are law-abiding citizens, who are trying to help a good cause. They want to stop all pro-Israel people from helping the Jews in Israel. That's basically what they're trying to do. They're trying to stop anyone who wants to help Israel now. That's what this is all about. They're going to try to stop anyone from helping Israel. So it's really an obscenity. I hope that our great JTFers out there are going to send them a message by giving us even more support than ever before. I hope let's show them this is going to backfire on them as well. They're not going to, they're not going to get away with doing this. Unfortunately, the support that you give us now, we can't, because we're being super, super cautious. We're not giving it to the Jews in Judea and Samaria temporarily. We're going to instead be using it to spread our message. The support you send us now temporarily until hopefully Donald Trump, when he takes office, hopefully will reverse this terrible anti-Semitic, un-American, anti-democratic policy, this Bolshevik policy of, it's amazing. These people, they don't believe in God. They want to destroy any religion, any morality. They want to destroy the family. They don't believe in the family. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in the Bible. And they're aligning themselves with Muslims. What a weird alliance this is. Muslims aligned with communist atheists. And I mean, you go to these demonstrations, you see these demonstrations against Israel, these anti-Semitic demonstrations, and they're waving the flag of all the Muslim terrorist organizations, and next to it, they're waving the gay flags and the transgender flags. I mean, this is so, it's just insanity. It's insanity. In other words, all the evil people getting together, all the haters of Jewish people and of Israel and of morality and of decency and of God and of the Bible, they all get together and they decided, well, you know what, we'll support the Muslims because the Muslims want to slaughter all of those people. And we'd like to see the Jews slaughtered. And that's really what's going on here. Oh, what a joke. But anyway, let me give you a chance now to support JTF. Your money's going to go now to help us spread our message because we're being super, super cautious now. And again, I understand that if maybe people who don't like that will say, wait a minute, I want the money to continue to go to Jewish pioneers in Judea and Samaria. We'll make it up to them if Trump cancels the sanctions. When this is reversed, we'll make it up to them, God willing. Okay? But in the meantime, anyone who knows JTF and knows me knows that, we've been super, super cautious about abiding by all of the laws and all of the rules. That's the way we operate. And again, you should help us more than ever now to show them that this is not going to work. This is going to backfire. And just like it backfired when they did it to Trump, and just like it backfired in the past when they did this to the Jews in Judea and Samaria, they're trying to do this against all Jews in Judea and Samaria. This is going to backfire. It's going to backfire. And if you want us to help spread this message to the Jews of Israel in order to strengthen them by spreading the message, because that was certainly, that's one thing that has nothing to do with the sanction. We're going to spread our message against all of this, and our message for the full land of Israel and for defending these heroic Jews. If you want to help us with spreading our message, because right now that's what we're limited to doing now because of this, temporarily though, only temporarily, I hope and expect. There are two ways you can help JTF spread its essential message. Number one, you can go to our Hebrew main page, hayamin.org, and you can click on the donate button. The page is in Hebrew, but there's a big donate button on top in English. You click on the donate button, and in several minutes, very easily and conveniently, you can donate. Donate generously and help us. We want to show them what they're doing is not going to work. You're not going to start boycotting all of Israel. And this is like BDS, what they're doing. They're trying to use the federal government to impose BDS-type rules against all the Jews of Israel. That's basically what they're trying to do. If you want to do it online. If you want to do it if you don't want to do it online, if you want to contribute through the regular mail, you send checks and money orders to, and the checks and money orders are made out to JTF, and you send it to JTF PO Box 650-327, Fresh Meadows, New York, 11365. What a story this is. And What an unbelievable story this is. And again, our hope is that Donald Trump will cancel the sanctions. I know the people he's appointing would like to see him cancel the sanctions, and I certainly hope and expect that he will do so, because the Republican side, they've almost every Republican leader I know has been against it. So hopefully that's what's going to take place, and then we will go back to supporting the heroic Jewish pioneers in Judea and Samaria, which is what we were able to do before October 1st, 2024, before this insane, ridiculous, anti-Semitic, unconstitutional, un-American attempt was made to use BDS tactics against all the Jews of Israel. We can't allow this. Can't allow that to take place. David?
All right, in Arizona, instead of counting all the ballots on election night, 5 days later, they were still counting ballots. I don't know how this happens in the computer age. There should be a computer program and every state votes the same via a keyboard. And it has to be a program that's approved by both Republicans and Democrats, that it won't change ballots, and that they have to have somebody who understands programming to check the code to make sure it can't be changed. And any ballot voted for a candidate will be counted for that candidate. And the results should be in an hour after the polls close in your state. There's no excuse for 5 days later and they're still counting ballots. I don't think it's 100% yet. And we're well past a week now.
New York, by the way, is not 100%. But if you saw David, who works in the New York Board of Elections, you would understand why. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sure it's similar when we get to South Arizona.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
And so the longer you protract this and carry this out day after day after day, the easier it is to cheat. Now Carrie Lake was trailing for the Senate seat, but she still had a chance with all the ballots that were still outstanding. But all of a sudden, in one of the counties, Pima County, which is further south than here, they found 25,000 ballots. There were just 25,000 ballots laying around, maybe on the floor, and nobody noticed it. They kept walking by and the ballots were sitting there, but nobody noticed it. And all of a sudden, 25,000 ballots showed up. And that killed Carrie Lake's chance of taking the Senate seat. She was trailing. She had a small chance. They gave her a 22% chance with the outstanding ballots, to still win, but not with the 25,000 ballots that were found, and that squashed that. And how can you still be counting votes? Even if you count by hand, it's not like there's a central location in each state. There are many polling places. Every couple of miles, there's a polling place. All they got to do is count the ballots from that polling place and submit it to the central location for your state. And then the state submits it to whoever they submit it to, and the news stations and the media. And it should all be done, even if they're counting by hand. They're not counting a whole state by hand. Each polling place is counting their ballots by hand. I can believe how slow it was. We went to a polling booth. There was almost nobody there. And I'm looking at 3 older women, and they're moving at a snail's pace. The woman was, I don't know, shaping up ballots, making nice, neat piles, while me and Ashadina and I was standing there just waiting to vote. And finally, someone else got ready and took us. But there's no excuse for us standing there. Why weren't we? I know there's some stores, usually run by Chinese, that says customer first. Everything else can wait. Well, it's obviously not the case in the polling booths. It's customer last. Do everything else first. One of the people Donald Trump picked as his border czar, I saw an interview he was on with a left-winger. First of all, his appearance. As soon as I saw him, I said, he reminds me of a bulldog. And they asked him, would you actually kick these people out and separate families? And he said, no, we're not going to separate families. They're all going to go. And then he said, anyway, if you have an American family and the father does something and he's sent to prison, that family is now separated. Those kids have lost, the wife and the kids have lost their income. The family is separated. It's no worse than that. But he said they all have to go. Okay, we'll see. Actions speak louder than words, a lot louder than words. I hope he looks like he could do the job. I wouldn't want to come across this guy. He looks like a Marine who's retired but put on some weight. He's like a cross between a Marine and a bulldog.
I just want to say though that I wasn't happy. I'm not happy so far with what I see on the immigration side with Trump. I'll tell you why. He's already saying, and people in his people that he's appointing are already saying that they're going to go after gangs and criminals. That's who they plan to deport. Gangs and criminals. Gangs and criminals? 30 million people are in the country illegally.
They're all criminals.
When you're in the country illegally, that means you should be removed and deported. All 30 million. Not just you have to prove that they're part of a gang or criminal, have the criminal record. That's a very small percentage if you're going to do it on that basis that you have to prove. How do you prove, I mean, I'm sure many of them are part of gangs, but you can't prove it. You have to prove it in a court of law. They'll never, that's never going to happen. He's going to remove the gangs and the criminals. I don't like the way this is sounding. Okay? They should go door to door. And he said he was going to use the military, and he said he was going to go door to door. We went through this in 2016 also. He promised that. So I'm sorry, David. I hate to rain on people's parade, but I'm not happy with that.
This guy, I didn't pick up his name. I was just scanning by, and I saw him, and I stopped.
No, I know.
He said they're going to go after the gangs and criminals first. That's okay with me, as long as he kicks all 30 million out. No excuses.
I don't like that. I don't like when he says first, because there is no such thing as first. When they say first, they're never going to get to second. Believe me.
30 million is a lot.
They're never going to get
kicked out 3 million.
They're never going to get to second when they say first. Okay, gangs and criminals is a very small percentage of the 30 million. Very small percentage. But anyway, go ahead. I'm just, Eisenhower kicked out millions. Obama kicked out millions. Millions of people were deported under Obama. There are always millions of people being deported because huge numbers of people come into the country illegally. The problem is that the numbers that come in are much greater than the numbers who were deported. That's the problem.
And those that are deported, many of them just turn around and come right back in.
So, true. And so the question is, which is, by the way, a 10-year prison term. If you were deported and you come back a second time, it's supposed to be a 10-year prison term. But who do they put? You see anybody being prosecuted? But anyway, the bottom line is, it's not that I want to rain on people's parade, and it's not that I know people are very still celebrating and so happy. It's just that I'm sorry. If the policy is going to be just to deport a small percentage of the 30 million people, I won't be one of the happy campers out there. I'm sorry. I won't be. I don't know, David, about you, but I will not be a happy camper.
As you were talking, it hit me what's going to happen. They'll start with the gangs and criminals, and it's going to be tied up in the courts for years. They won't even be able to get rid of the criminals. And so the rest of the 30 million, half of them are up to no good anyway. They won't even be touched. So it hit me while you were talking.
Well, first of all, if they're gonna go after gangs, and why only go after gangs and criminals? Why? I mean, why? They're going to look and try to separate these different and the other ones, they're going to say, oh, you can stay, even though we found you. You're here illegally, but you're not a gang or a criminal. Oh, okay. Maybe we'll get to you later. I mean, come on, give me a break. Give me a break. We need a wall. We need real deportation of all people who are here illegally and a wall.
With razor wire.
Okay? That's what we need. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being a party pooper, but that's what I believe in. Go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't know if I told this story, but it's worth telling again. You get these internet media guys who are very conservative, and they went to this rich area where they think taking all these people in are wonderful. So the interviewer said, "You really think having all these people break our laws, our immigration laws, is a good thing?" She says, "Yes, because they're people just like us, and we have to open our hearts to them." So the guy turned around and signaled to a bus that was waiting down the street to pull up. And I guess this was all a setup. These weren't real immigrants. They were just Hispanic people. And they got off the bus, and he said, he asked the woman, "How many will you take in?" And she slammed the door in his face. And then he yelled, "Well, will you at least give them dinner?" Nothing. So it just shows when it comes to when the rich people want immigration here, legal and illegal, they're all for it till it hits home. They want you to do it, not them. It's like when taxes come. You pay the taxes. We have accountants that'll get us out of paying taxes.
They also want to take everybody's guns, except for the rich people, of course, will always find a way to get the license for their gun, no matter what the laws are. The rich people have attorneys and connections with politicians. They can do it. But they want to take the guns away from decent, hardworking Americans. You know, hypocrisy, and every subject is hypocrisy. By the way, the election was a rebellion against that as well. You notice in the election, Donald Trump one day was working in McDonald's, one day was in the garbage truck. That was the campaign he ran, a working class campaign. Kamala Harris, she was with Oprah Winfrey and Beyonce. I don't even know who Beyonce. I never listened to that music because I can't stand that. But
and Whoopi Goldberg
and Bruce Springsteen, and all the celebrities were coming to support. All the celebrities, and I forgot the name of that other one, that white girl that they made such a big deal when she
Taylor
endorsed.
Swift.
Yeah, when she endorsed
Robert De Niro.
Yeah, all the Hollywood people. And she was running around to the very end campaigning with them all over the place. Remember Bruce Springsteen, all over the place. American people, that backfired too. That backfired. They'd rather have the guy working in McDonald's and the guy that was in the garbage truck. They'd rather have him than the Hollywood elite who look down their noses at everybody. I'm sorry, David. Go ahead.
No. You got something to say? Say it. Also, I'm hearing that Comcast is putting MSNBC up for sale, and CNN will be announcing massive layoffs. I wonder why. Fox, who I stopped watching years ago, has been stomping them for years. The two of them together don't meet Fox's ratings, and I don't even know what's kept them in business. They must have a guardian angel somewhere funding them. But finally, it's hitting home now. People can't take the lies anymore. And the obscene nature of, instead of bringing us the news and giving both sides on opinions, they're just the propaganda arm for the Democrat Party, from the far left Democrat Party. We were talking a little bit about Arabs before. I just want to bring this up. Arabs, Muslims, have been a problem, not just to Israel. They've been a problem all over the world, all the time. When they didn't have the oil money, they were small problems, but they were problems. And if you go way back in British history, there was Prime Minister Gladstone, and he said the accursed Quran, so long as this book exists, there will never be peace in the world. So this is going back centuries now. Churchill, the religion of Islam, above all others, was founded on the sword. Moreover, it provides incentives to slaughter. and in 3 continents has produced fighting breeds of men filled with a wild and merciless fanaticism. And John Adams, our second president, Muhammad declared undistinguishing and exterminating war as part of his religion against all the rest of mankind. See, it doesn't matter. It's not just Jews. It's all the rest of mankind. The precept of the Quran is perpetual war against all those who refuse to say that Muhammad is the prophet of God. Well, prophets usually tell you what you're doing wrong and to repent, and if you don't, this will happen. Muhammad was just a thief, a murderer, a plunderer, a rapist, a pedophile, and those were his good points. Now, American schools, I don't know what grade this was, but the teacher, and you know what kind of people teach our schools for the most part, the overwhelming majority. Kids in school told to write a report on inequality. This young girl wanted to write a report on the inequality of allowing male transgenders to compete in women's sports. She was the only one told, no, you can't write on that subject.
Which grade was this in?
This must have been junior high school.
Oh. There's no junior high school anymore. I forgot what they call it now. But
middle school.
Middle school, yeah. That was when we went to school. They used to call it junior high school.
Yeah, it was grades 1 to 6.
Yeah.
It was elementary. Then 7, 8, 9 was junior high.
Right.
And then 10, 11, and 12 was high.
Right.
Some places, maybe parochial schools, I don't know, private schools, didn't have junior high. See, your elementary school was 1 to 8, and you went to high school in the 9th grade. And then a little bit more on Israel. When the war in the Middle East finally is stopped temporarily or comes to an end, hopefully Israel will destroy everything they should have destroyed in a matter of weeks. The international communities are going to send money in to rebuild Gaza. They're going to send money in to rebuild Lebanon. They might even send money in to rebuild some of the parts of Iran. But as far as building Israel, they're on their own. Maybe the United States will help, but that's about it. Israel is on their own. The attackers, the violent people, the people who live to kill, they're the ones that are going to be rebuilt.
Israel's better off doing it by themselves. Israel doesn't need foreign forces coming in and interfering.
No, because then you become a slave to the master.
The Israeli economy, they can handle it. You know, did you know that Israel's economy with 7 million Jews is almost as big as Russia's economy? Just a little point. Did you know that China and India, China has 1.5 billion people, India has 1.5 billion people. That's 3 billion people. There are 8 billion people in the world. 3 billion live just in China and in India. They have, between the two of them, they have less than 10% of the scientists that Israel has with 7 million Jews. Just little points, little statistics. Israel can handle themselves. If Israel finally got some sane leadership, like Moshe Feiglin, they could handle it. They could easily handle all of this themselves. Oh, and I really hope that Donald Trump keeps his word about making America energy independent and acts on that quickly. I really hope he does, because the Arabs have nothing. The Muslim and the Arab world have nothing except for that oil. That's the only thing they have.
And they can't produce anything.
If you put them out of business with that, if you made America the energy producer and put them out of business, that's the end of the problem. That's the end of the problem. I hope that Trump acts on it even much more aggressively than he did in his first term. In his first term, he was certainly better than Biden and Harris. But I really hope he acts on that. That would really be very important for the future of the whole world.
Well, even though the price of gas has been falling, it's still $1 a gallon more than when Trump left office. And $1 a gallon, you put 25 gallons in your car, if it's a big SUV or a pickup truck, probably takes a lot more than that. That's a big chunk of money out of your pocket, paying $1 more per gallon. I have a little car, a Toyota RAV4. So the gas tank is small, and theoretically my mileage should be great, but I ordered the car, I got the car with the V6, and that brings your mileage way down. So I'm constantly filling up because the gas tank is small, and I'm constantly adding to it, filling it back up because of the small gas tank. And gas mileage, it's not too good. Finally, there's an Italian young man in America. His whole life, he wanted to be a rapper. And you could see the way he walks, the way he moves his hands, and the way he talks with the rapper accent. That's his speech, not when he raps. This is an Italian boy. Italians are about as patriotic as any Americans can get. They built our major cities. They were the ones that also aided the Irish in running the cities. I told you once about 1922, Italian ship coming in, and an Italian man holding his maybe 2.5, 3-year-old son up. And as they're passing the Statue of Liberty, it was a silent film, they're waving the American flag. How do you get more patriotic than that? They were coming here for an opportunity. There was no welfare. In those days, it was called home relief. But that was minimal. And they came here for an opportunity. He probably didn't even speak any English, but they made out, and their children did better than them, and their children did better than them. They're all patriotic, except for a few exceptions, like the Cuomo family and Robert De Niro and Nancy Pelosi, but those are few and far between. And this guy doesn't appreciate Italian-American culture or American-American culture. Well, we don't have anything we've ever done that he would want to imitate. He wants to imitate rap and talk like a rapper.
What about Italian? What about Italian culture from Italy? They gave the world the Renaissance.
Yeah, the Florentine.
I mean, he instead of the Renaissance, he wants a rant like a. Anyway, not going to say. I'm a civil rights leader. I'm not going to say what I want to say. But he wants a rant, and disgusting, vulgar, just nauseating, ignorant, stupid ranting. That's what they prefer. Anyway.
It is. It's ranting. It's not music. He's not singing. None of them are singing. They're glorifying ignorance and violence and putting it to rhyme to background music. What happened to the days where you needed talent to make a recording? Those days are long gone. Ashadina was in a secondhand store, Goodwill, just shopping. You know how women have to shop. And they put on Pretty Little Angel Eyes from 1961. And this young girl, about 17, said to her, "Oh, is that a new song? Did that just come out?" The young girl said, "That song is great." And Ashadina told her, "That's from 1961. That's what music from decades ago sounded like." And as much as I love the 50s music, it's not as good as the big band era. Do you remember you always hear songs from the big band. You remember songs like Moonlight Serenade, In the Mood, Sing, 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 Big Noise from Winetta.
I think actually the music, even going back to World War I and the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, I think all of it was so vastly superior to what we have now. And Hollywood also was, in those days, the Hollywood movies were incredible. They conquered the hearts of the world in those days, the old Hollywood. But now, it's, anyway, pathetic.
In the 30s, you had Bing Crosby and Russ, short for Rusty Colombo. He was either killed or died in 1934. The joke was that Crosby had him killed, but that was just a joke. The thing is, when you listen to Bing Crosby sing "Don't Fence Me In," that's Bing Crosby after his vocal polyps. He didn't have surgery. He thought he'd lose his voice. If you want to hear Bing Crosby at his full power, listen to some of the recordings he made in the 1930s. Because when those polyps hit his throat, his voice got deeper, he lost his range, and he lost some of his power. The big thing, though, was he lost his range. And you will hear it. It's like two different voices. I mean, you can hear it's Crosby in both cases, but Bing Crosby from the 30s, his first recording of his signature song, Where the Blue of the Night Meets the Gold of the Day, listen to that when he recorded it around 1934 or 35, compared to his re-recording, because his voice changed so much, he had to change his signature song, so he had to re-record it in the mid-40s to match his new, deeper, small range voice. And in the 40s, he started making a lot of recordings with other people, like the Andrews Sisters, which is fine, but he did it because his voice wasn't what it was. And a lot of times I talk about how stupid Americans are. I'll use the Kerry Lake example. You voted for Donald Trump by quite a big margin. And then you're going to tell me you jumped the ticket in the most gun-free state, the most gun-loved state, and you voted for a guy who's against guns, who's going to be opposed to everything Trump does. He claimed he had the endorsement of the border agents. Possibly he did, I don't know. But if he did, in a few months, they're going to say they have buyer's remorse voting for him. Why would you vote for Trump for president and then vote for somebody who's going to be opposed to him in the Senate? I can't get over the ignorance and stupidity of American people. And if you ask me why I say that, from the movie Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, because you are, Blanche, you are. And that's it, I'm through.
In your heart, you know we're right. And in your guts, you know they're nuts. For J.T.F., until next week, and for David Ben Moshe, this is Chaim Ben Pesach. Shalom.